let's just jump right into it. What are some of the things that you can do regarding the vid? Right? We call it, there's so many names for it. The vid, the COVID, the corona, the rona, so many names. And ultimately, this was seen from a mile away, right? Second wave. Obviously, the intention of the shutdown wasn't to eradicate the virus. It was to just slow down the spread. And now that states are laxing, right, their restrictions of going out and about, people are mingling, of course, there's going to be increases in the number of cases. And so while there's all these discussions on mask or not, my recommendation with a mask is, hey, Bakosi, yes, also one of my favorite souls. And so as far as masks, I'll just say, look, do what you want with a mask. We'll table that, right? Because that's like, politics, just too much. Mask, we'll table that. What I want to talk about are some hard science, right? Hard proven things that will help you with this, right? With the second wave, because it's coming. We're just in the beginning of it for sure. And so one of the things you want to look at is, well, what are my options? Or what are my options going forward? And, I was just at a recent birthday party of one of my favorite souls on this planet, Miss Sophia. And we talked about this, right? We had this little family gathering of what are the only three potential options, right? Only three. There's no other options. It's either you trust the vaccine and you get the vaccine. You live in fear, right? You live very carefully until this ends. We don't know when this is going to end. Like, every year there's a flu season. So we don't know when it's going to end until it ends, right? You live in fear. Or you get the virus and you develop the antibodies. At this point, it's most likely that the antibodies that you develop will last. It's not 100%. Right? Those are the only three options long term. There's no fourth option, right? And so if you go, well, I don't want to live in fear, and you rule that out, and you go, well, I don't want the vaccine, and you rule that out, essentially what you're left with is you're just going to get the virus and then develop the antibodies, right? And so the majority of the people that I speak to, that's sort of their chosen path. And so once we discern that, then we go, well, what is the current fear that you have? And most people's fear isn't, I'm going to die. It's, I don't want to cause the death of another person, right? So that was sort of the decision algorithm, right? So it's, I want to get it, but I'm not concerned that I'm going to die. I want to make sure people around me don't die. And so this video is about, okay, so that is the outcome, decision, intention, concern. What are the action steps that you can do if that is your decision? And we're going to talk about that, right? And so essentially, things that you don't hear about on mass media, of course, and you'll hear and see some of the things on Facebook, which is, well, what are some things that's possible from a biological standpoint to prepare you or the people that you come in contact with, right, for the vid on the second wave? And so, the biological stuff is pretty simple. I posted a link. I put up a video that I just made for some friends. Essentially, if you have no comorbidities or the people you love, right, your family members, your friends that you're coming in contact with, do not have comorbidities, which means you don't have high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, or obesity. Those are the main four. Essentially, you don't have systemic inflammation. And so if that's the case, then there's a very inexpensive and simple thing that you can do, right? We know, everyone knows, hey, we need vitamin D. There's pretty much proven science that vitamin D can help drastically decrease the severity of your reaction to the virus. The drawback is, what you don't hear about is 80% of the people are deficient in magnesium, and you need magnesium to be able to use your vitamin D. And so assuming you're going outside, that's the best source of vitamin D, 15 minutes of lots of sun on your skin. If you're not getting access to that, then you want to take some vitamin D. However, you want to make sure you actually take magnesium, right? Because most people are deficient in magnesium. And I post research showing that you can get blood work to show you have enough magnesium and you're still deficient in magnesium. Because what's floating in the liquid of your blood does not represent what's inside your cells, right? Very important. You can basically 80% chance, right? You can, most of you, like 1 out of 5 people have it, but 4 out of 5 people, you basically assume you're deficient in magnesium. So take a form of magnesium. And again, in the link that I have to the blog post that I have a video on how to access the right types of vitamin and magnesium, right? So don't worry about the technical stuff. I have the technical stuff for you. And so if you don't have comorbidities, right, if you're on this side, you're pretty healthy. You just basically take like some magnesium, some vitamin C, very simple supplements. Now, if you do have comorbidities, right, you have obesity, diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, or you know someone that does, you're going to want to take a more extensive immune boosting, body restoring, biological boosting protocol, right? So I have an option there, right? So you have 2 choices. If you have no more comorbidities, it's a very inexpensive monthly thing. If you do, you're going to need a more extensive and more costly sort of protocol on that side, right? So this way you can make an algorithmic decision on what best suits you and your loved ones. Super simple. And so again, I want to share with you some interesting data, right? And I posted again in an article maybe 2 days ago, how colostrum, right? Again, pretty inexpensive. You can buy it. And colostrum just milk that women produce after they give birth to a baby. And of course, cows produce after they give birth to a baby calf. The colostrum, they gave a group of people colostrum and they followed them during the flu season. And the other group got the flu vaccine and they followed them during the flu season. And what they found between the two groups is that the group that took the colostrum had basically worked 300% better, right? It had less symptoms than the vaccine, right? This is huge. This is not stuff you're gonna, your doctor's not gonna say, hey, instead of the vaccine for a flu, this thing actually works 300% better and does not put chemicals into your body. You're not gonna hear that because there's no colostrum rep buying your doctor lunch and saying, hey, go prescribe and recommend colostrum. And so the more advanced protocol has colostrum plus probiotics, all the stuff, a lot of stuff. It is much more of a heavier investment, but that beats death, right? So for your loved ones, I would recommend either send them the resource and say, look, if you have no comorbidities, just take simple magnesium, some vitamin C and things. If you do have comorbidities, you're going to want to take the supplements. Now, keep in mind, the supplements are just a bridge. Right? People ask me, how long do I take the supplements? You don't want to take supplements forever. They're called supplements, right? They're not called foundation. And so it's just to buy you time so you take action to take the behaviors to make them a part of you so you become healthy, right? In other words, your ideal path going forward isn't about trying hard to become healthy. It's about labeling yourself and embodying a person of health. Right? I want to make a clear distinction. Now we're getting to the energy part of this show, right? It isn't to add a bunch of stuff, a bunch of to-do lists to your already busy list, right? So you get healthy. It's about becoming and labeling yourself and naturally choosing healthy things, right? Now they may sound very similar, but they're drastically different, right? In other words, you can say, if your internal image of the self is earlier, I'll give an example. I was just talking to a patient. She's like, I'm just addicted to sugar. Lifelong, I'm addicted to sugar. Well, that's a label. That's a trait. And so, and then of course she went on to say, I'm a very happy person. Everyone talks about how happy I am. So I asked her, well, why do you think you're addicted to sugar? I don't know. Well, how do you feel when you eat sugar? I don't know. Those are major red flags. And so 5 minutes later of me probing a little bit more, what we discovered is that she was abused as a child and she suppresses all those memories. And of course, then after that surfaces, she kind of realized, hey, I eat sugar as a way to feel better, right? And she's obese and has high blood pressure. And so of course her doctor, and here's the interesting part, she actually went to a psychologist. So good, I went to a psychologist about my depression, that severe depression. Her psychologist did this. Her psychologist asked her about her childhood, and it surfaced that she had a rough childhood. And here's what her psychologist said. That must be the problem, right? And so I was like, okay, great. So your psychologist identified the source. What was the actionable? And she said nothing. She would just actually stop that, I identified the source. And I said, well, you should have charged your psychologist because what you did was you paid her to feed her ego of, hey, I did a good job and pat myself on the back. Right. And so, and after digging more, she said my psychologist's answer was to take a pill. Right. And so the solution of the mass media, mainstream healthcare was, see, that's your problem. You had a rough childhood, so take an antidepressant. I am obviously not a big fan of that, right? And so I had suggested to her a simple technique to process her stories, right, of her previous childhood experiences in a way that serves her. I won't go into the details, that's beyond the scope of this video. And essentially that allows her to energetically let go of the constant suppression. She's like, I can't watch drama movies. I can't watch anything. I only watch comedies. Because any drama movies and any caustic movies reminds me of my childhood. Right? And so obviously she spent her entire adult life suppressing that energy. Is she going to live at a state of ease and be healthy? Of course not. So for her to get healthy in a traditional way, right, a traditional coach, health coach or nutritionalist or a personal trainer, a doctor, right, would say things like, you got to try harder. You got to be more disciplined. You got to make sure you stay away from sugar. Right? You got to fast. You got to do your fasting. You got to eat keto. Who knows what the recommendation is. Where ultimately her entire being and self-label is a person who has experienced a childhood memory that is so caustic that she spent her life suppressing it. And so the greatest opportunity for her is not to address it by doing more. It's by letting go of the current energy and emotions and reframing who she is and label herself not as a carb or a sugar addict, but essentially recognizing that in the past she had used sugar to feel better when her feelings were surfaced from the, basically the harsh emotional memories that she's had that she hasn't learned to process. When she learns to process those memories, she becomes a person that no longer needs the sugar to offset, right, those feelings, right? So it's a letting go process and a relabeling process. If you notice throughout that whole thing, I didn't use she was triggered and the trauma. The two T words are so popular in mass media language right now. It is very purposeful to instill the energy into you that you're hurt and that you are somehow not, that you're triggered like a gun, like you're at any moment, you do not have any emotional control over this self. That is the language of the mass media. I highly recommend, if you're watching this video, be aware that if language starts to be used for you, towards you, in front of you repeatedly, have awareness that there's some things happening that may not be serving for you, right? So you get to choose to use those T words, trigger and trauma, or not to use those T words. And it's up to you to think and feel through, do those words serve me or not, right? Because if your goal is to reframe the childhood experience from one that is now currently not serving you to one that is serving you, calling it trauma, you have already attached an energy and a story to it. Now you got to get it back to neutral and then go all the way the other way to serving you. You might also just call it what it is, which is when she was abused physically as a child, it was a heightened emotional experience. That is calling it what it is without having to assign it to a story. Essentially, she gets to restory or reframe that essentially in a way that is serving for her, right? So that is one of the greatest things that you can do in the vid, right? In the second wave of the vid. The biological stuff, that's super simple. That is just a link right there. The energy stuff will take a little bit of internal practice for you, looking at the onion that is you and revealing the layers that typically is in you that may be hidden, that is actually a dis-ease, a lack of ease that's in you. And you get to find that and reframe it back to ease, right? It's literally, that is some of the greatest practice that you can do during this time. Now, here's the big urgency for you. There's never been a history of human existence where the importance of this is as high as it is now. Right? In other words, up until, I'm going to say, October of 2019, right? Prior to that, you could live with high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease by taking your pills, right? If you choose to do the pill way. And just as a side note, right, I feel like I need to repeat this in multiple videos because it'd be awesome if all of you watch all the videos, but I know that's not the case. know that when you go to your cardiologist and your high cholesterol is measured and they give you a statin, that statin has a less than 1% chance of helping you, right? Just Google NNT, Nate Thomas, NNT score of a statin. It'll tell you, you'll find out what it is. And the NNT score of a statin is 113. That means 113 people have to take it for one person to benefit. That's not a good chance. And I just posted, literally just by eating pomegranates on a daily basis, it can not only help you with the cholesterol, it can actually clear your arteries. No statins are clearing your arteries, right? And so there's that. I must do that. And so, circle back. So, in the past, you could live with heart disease. It's a slow death, right? You won't die today, tomorrow, this week. It's like, years, if not decades in the future with your high blood pressure. You can take a medicine for that, and it's managed. Now, with the vid, you could get it. And literally a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, you could die from it, right? Because of the root cause of your high blood pressure, your obesity, and your cardiovascular disease, and your diabetes is systemic inflammation. And that systemic inflammation on top of COVID, which is an inflammatory illness, causes excessive inflammation, and that's what's killing people, right? All those weird side effects that people have with the kids, with the toes, and all this stuff, right? They're labeling all these symptoms, 20 different symptoms, and the mass media saying, we don't know, it's so weird. If you look at the foundation of it and science, yes, it's not weird. It's inflammation. Inflammation is not being told to you as a root cause because it points your attention towards sources and root causes. And the system, I'll just call it the industrial complex, doesn't want you to know about systemic inflammation. Now, if you're like, Steve, this is a conspiracy theory, just go and Google systemic inflammation and illness, right after this video. In 5 minutes, you will see the scientific published research on, we know it's the root cause. It's the root biological cause of almost all non-infectious illnesses, right? This isn't conspiracy. This is known public research, right? This is not like on some blog posts, right? This is published medical research, thousands and thousands of research articles, right? And so the mass media industrial complex doesn't want to point your attention towards systemic inflammation because we're now addressing root causes. And if we're addressing root causes, we're taking money away from the $2.9 trillion being spent managing your chronic illnesses. Okay? And so that's all fine and dandy prior to October 2019. Now, with the vid, you might die within a week. It is a possibility, right? Because we know 95% of the people in America that are dying from COVID, corona, whatever you want to call it, have a comorbidity, right? One of those 4 conditions. And so now is the greatest time in human history of urgency, of importance, to get rid of those diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, and obesity. Also, the other way to say it is those are just symptoms of to reduce your chronic systemic inflammation. I cannot stress how important this is, right? Just think, instead of the $2 trillion they gave to people and businesses and all the things that happened, if they just spent $1 billion putting out commercials, educating people about chronic systemic inflammation, how to reduce it, and then the other $1.99 trillion giving people the resources to reduce chronic systemic inflammation, we would not have to have an economic shutdown. We would have a long-term solution. But of course, the drawback to that is it's the government spending $2 trillion that robs the healthcare industry every year of $2.9 trillion. So it is not in the best interest for the government to spend your tax dollars to heal you. I know now again, you might be thinking this is conspiracy theory. No, it's business economics, it's capitalism. It is not the capitalism that I believe should, right? I don't use that word much, but should go forward. I believe in the future there are conscious capitalists working on changing the entire system. But just to help you understand, it's just numbers. $2.9 trillion managing chronic illness. Managing, not curing, not resolving, not reversing, not studying to find the root causes, but managing, right? So it is up to you. This is going to be a bottom-up approach because it won't be a top-down approach, right? The top, meaning the system, the big companies, they're the ones profiting, making the $2.9 trillion. Do you think they want to end their profits? Probably not, right? And so this has to be a bottom-up approach. Thus, I'm making these videos urging you, if you have the diabetes, the high blood pressure, the cardiovascular disease, and the obesity, it means you have chronic systemic inflammation. You can verify this. You can go to your doctor and ask for a test for C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, interleukin-1 beta. Those are the key things. You can measure this, right? If your doctor, 2 years ago when I created this supplement called the Shield, which was designed to reduce chronic systemic inflammation, I basically sold it at cost in exchange for data. And I asked people to test for those things. I said, go to your doctor and ask to test for the HSCRP, the interleukin-1 beta, the 6, and the 8. Those are the three main ones. Many people came back with, my doctors don't know what they are. They don't know what the interleukins are. What should I do? I said, step 1, get a new doctor, right? Step 2, if the new doctor isn't willing to test for it, here are the labs that you can just pay for out of pocket to test, right? There are actual blood work you can get to see how much systemic inflammation you have in your body. And so at this point, I will say in our Immortal business, we've tested enough people. We've had people come to the experiences for me to interact with them and to sense their energies. I can tell you it is very, very, very unlikely that if you're watching this video that you do not have some type of chronic systemic inflammation, right? Because we know 93% of the people have Roundup in their system. They tested this. Every human we've ever tested has had off the charts levels of pesticides, rocket fuel, industrial toxins. And so it is almost impossible that you do not have chronic systemic inflammation, right? And we know this. We have all the data to show how autoimmune diseases are skyrocketing. Allergies are skyrocketing. Obesity. People think obesity and all that stuff and diabetes is from sugar. It is not purely from sugar. That is the most obvious blame. It is not directly from sugar, right? Because it wouldn't explain the entire picture, right? It's from the industrial chemicals. It's from the excessive antibiotics, and we have data, right? I posted articles about this where there's a study showing that babies prior to age 1, given an antibiotic, right? How many babies do you know with an ear infection, immediately they're given an antibiotic? Well, their lifetime risk for diabetes just doubled. 100% increased risk for diabetes for the rest of their life from one bout of antibiotics, right? That's like criminal in my mind, right? And so and we know the cost to manage someone with diabetes, which you mentioned, these heart disease, is $250,000 a year. I'll give you another way to say this. When a doctor prescribes a antibiotic, and I don't want to imply that they're doing this knowingly, right? When a doctor prescribes an antibiotic to a child, they just doubled their likelihood of costing the medical system, the other way to say this, of adding medical system spending, really it's like saying adding profits to the medical system by 100%, $250,000, right? 100% increase in likelihood of generating $250,000 to the medical system. This is not conspiracy theory. This is studied medical research. Okay? So, urging you, please take action, because the second wave is not going away. As the U.S. lessens the lockdown, even if they try to tighten, I can sense the energy. People are frustrated. If you're watching this, are you like, hey, I am so happy to stay inside and not, interact with other humans? No. People are like, I want to interact with humans. And so thus the writing, it's all this sort of energy that's moving. So I do not see the average American in the next year just happily complying, feeling all calm and safe, just continue to distance and not go outside in public, right? And so people are going to go out in public, and it will spread, right? And so you might be thinking, well, the death rate and the severity of it we're seeing is not as bad, right? Air quotes, don't think we use those words, as they're saying it is. It isn't, but we can't deny the fact that it is contagious. We can't deny the fact that 95% of people who die from it have comorbidity. I would love to have people not die from it. Doesn't matter how deadly or not deadly it is. That's irrelevant. Who cares if the CDC is saying X, Y, and Z Who cares if the mortality rate is 0.26, 0.25, 0.1, 0.02? Doesn't matter. We do know the number to pay attention to is 95% of the people that die have a comorbidity. If you do not want to die, get rid of your comorbidities. All other numbers, in my mind, kind of irrelevant, right? And so, how do you do that? You address your systemic inflammation. The supplements, the biological stuff is just a bridge. That is just to buy you time. You do not want to take vitamin C and magnesium and some vitamin D for the rest of your life. That is silly, right? That's too many pills. That is just to buy you time so you adopt the healthy behaviors. It's why we are, building something to give this to the masses, secret project that won't be so secret coming soon, right? And so we're building something to have you all, if you're watching this, adopt the healthy behaviors naturally in a fun and easy way without using willpower, dedication, determination, sacrifice, and all that stuff, right? Because you don't want to practice those things. And so that is coming. But in the meantime, early start, make those choices to decrease systemic inflammation, right? And so if you're watching this and you don't know what that process is, comment, reach out to me. I'm here to support you because I feel like this video, if just one of you took action to reduce your systemic inflammation, there's a pretty good chance. I have an ego. All humans is great. I like to think that I'm saving lives by making these videos, right? And so I'm not sitting here using my attention for no reason. It is to support all of you watching because I believe that this has to be a bottom-up approach. It's us helping each other, supporting each other. This is a grassroots process, right? Again, if you're just watching this, recent, you haven't tuned in from the beginning, the top-down process can't happen because they're going to take 2.9 trillion away from their pockets, right? I do not see a motivation for top-down. This has to be a bottom-up. And so I encourage you to share this information to help your neighbors, to help your family members. I have a blog post. It's a video. You just go order this stuff to buy you time to get healthy, right? This has to be that approach, right? So I urge you now, not later, right? There's no reason. I have so many friends that are saying on a probably at this point weekly, almost definitely bi-weekly, almost a weekly basis on my wall, someone's like, one of my friends just died from COVID, or even worse, one of my friends just committed suicide because of what's happening, right? This doesn't have to be. Suicide and depression from a biological basis, guess what? Chronic systemic inflammation. If we can reduce inflammation in our system, our brains do not as much get into that depressive state. The other side of it is the energy, right? If we solve all experiences as a value to us, what I call obstacles into opportunities, we wouldn't be depressed, right? Unfortunately, most people do not have that practice lifelong. Now's a great time to start, right? Seeing all obstacles as opportunities. Start small, work your way backwards, see all of your previous experiences that don't serve you, and reframe it in a way that serves you, right? What's fine, just write down. What was the value of that experience? It doesn't matter if you were abused, you were beaten, you were shouted at, you grew up poor, right? I grew up picking from the trash for the furniture. I grew up watching, my parents physically fighting and my mom losing those fights. I grew up being thrown against the wall by my older brother. Still love you, right? We used to fight a lot. I, would not win because he's 5 years older. I grew up in severe poverty. I grew up being bullied in school, right? When I came to America, believe it or not, there was a point where Asians weren't super popular when I was younger. And so, no blame on the amazing Caucasian friends, right? I don't blame any of you. I look at it as the people who bullied me. Now that I have my wisdom, I can sense back into their existence. They were not treated well at home, right? So it helped me develop empathy, right? To grow up poor helps me value all the little things that I have, right? I am definitely not for 20 years I drove my college car with my daughter makes fun of me. Like my mirror broke off and I used Gorilla Glue, which is orange. The car is black. I didn't care. I glued the mirror on. I don't really care about the material stuff. And so it gave me tremendous value to experience every one of those things that a lot of people in the self-help, personal growth, coaching space would call trauma. Oh my God, I was thrown through a wall. Trauma. Oh my God, I saw my father beat my mom. trauma. Oh my God, I witnessed being so poor, not being able to afford anything, picking up on the trash. No, they weren't trauma. They were experiences of heightened emotions that I found to be serving. Right? So you can reframe things. And so do that. Take care of your energy, right? Get into the state of ease. Live in a state of ease and practice transmutating, transforming the previous experiences into one that serves you, that takes care of the energy side. The biological side, super simple. Go read the blog post, right? Have all the biological stuff. And so I will end with the simple left brain stuff. Here's the biology. Either comorbidities, you take the massive, immune boosting protocol with all kinds of stuff. If you have no comorbidities or your loved one don't, you take the very simple stuff. Now, if you take the supplements and you actually get the virus and you have a severe reaction, you actually would buy prior to getting it. You basically have a bottle of the silver flower. Again, in the blog post, there's a resource for this. You call Allie. I told the rep, for my friends, even though you only typically sell to doctors only, for my friends, sell to them. So when you call Allie, be like, hey, I'm a patient of Steve's. She'll sell you the silver flower directly. Silver flower, very inexpensive bottle. You have it just in case. If you have a severe reaction to COVID, it has a 90% chance of resolving your extreme case, right? So you think about it, you have a low chance of having a severe case if you boost your immune system. If you happen to be in a group that's, unfortunately unlucky, and you have a severe case, you take the silver flower. That has a 90% chance of resolving it. Okay? So you're already at a very, very, very small chance of actually having a severe reaction to it with that in place. Now, God forbid, your immune boosting actions didn't work, and the silver flower for some reason didn't work. You just happen to be in that rare 10%. You get exosomes. Exosomes have proof that it decreases and gets rid of the fibrotic buildup in your lungs that causes you to suffocate, that then causes you to die. Again, so this is the protocol that I would recommend. As the ultimate backup is the exosomes. Prior to that, immune boosting, or prior to that is silver flower. Prior to that is immune boosting, right? This is a very simple algorithmic process, right? And so one of the things we talked about, if you're in a social setting, right, what you do is if you know you might have been exposed, you self-quarantine for 2 days, you get the test, you want to get 3 tests because none of them are 100% accurate. You test, every 24 hours you get a test. If all 3 are negative, you're good to go. You don't have to quarantine for 14 days, go out and about. If you test 3 in a row and you have it, you're going to want to quarantine for at least 14 days, if not longer. And you want to get additional testing, the PCR testing to see if you actually have the active virus. If not, then, once you don't have it, then you're clear, right? This is algorithmic process, science. There's no guesswork and all that stuff in this process, in my mind, right? And so hopefully that video was helpful for you to give you some clarity on what you can do to prepare for essentially the vid, right? Because the second wave, this is not going away, right? And so I can extrapolate a bunch of varied data. This is not going away, right? So again, you only have 3 options. Either get the vaccine, live in fear, or follow these strategies.